Hi, everyone. Thanks to be there for this talk about Kotlin and Spring Boot. This is my first time in sunny Serbia, in Belgrade, so I'm very happy to be there, especially since the weather is really great. Since it's my first time, let me introduce myself. So I'm Nicolas Frankel. I'm a consultant, so whatever the customer asks me to do, I probably do it. Yeah, I sell my body, like probably you do. And in the evening, I do fun stuff. I code, sometimes I teach, I train, I blog, I do a lot of stuff. Currently, I'm working for Hybris. Hybris has been acquired by SAP. Probably, who knows about SAP? Okay, great. So Hybris was an e-commerce company. We were developing a product. Now, of course, the portfolio is very big, but mainly our flagship product is an e-commerce shop, so you can buy Hybris and start selling your stuff online in no time. It's multi-channel. It has a lot of integration options, and it's based on Spring and Java. I've been asked to tell you about a startup challenge. Basically, SAP is providing a cloud platform called HTTP, like HANA Cloud Platform. And perhaps you have a super great idea about a product and you want to host it online. You can do that with HTTP, but probably you don't know how to use it. So if you want to know how to use it, you have the opportunity to participate in this workshop. It's on October the 4th, and it's free. And then you can learn about HTTP, and you can participate in the challenge. Who here knows about Spring? Yeah, nearly everyone. That's great. Who knows about Spring Boot? Nearly the same. So I will be very quick. The Spring framework is a great framework that mainly was made to ease the pain of developing with Java EE applications. And it offers you a lot of features and stuff. And when I was younger, and I had to start a project, I told the developers, yeah, do whatever you want, and let me one day to create the project, to create the POM, to craft it, to add the required dependency, to set the right version, and tomorrow come to work, because I have to do that. And it takes me one day, generally. And a lot of people were bitching about it because Spring is great, but one day to start a project is too much. So the guy said, hey, let's invent Spring Boot. And if Spring is the little ingredients that you have to use yourself, the Spring Boot is a cake already made, and it's very convention over configuration. And with Spring Boot, you can kickstart your project in minutes, not in days, really. You can really do that in minutes. And one of the best features I love about Spring Boot is the actuator. Who knows about the actuator? Great. One third of the room. So the actuator is really an out-of-the-box monitoring stuff. Basically, if you don't know the actuator, look on the internet, I've done talks on it. It's really great, and without any coding, basically, you can monitor and you can check that your application runs well. It's really, really great. And of course, it's made for microservices, but you can use it for a normal web app. And now, Kotlin. So basically, I love Spring Boot, and I love Kotlin. Who knows about Kotlin? And not so many people. You are in the right room then. Kotlin is a language that is developed by JetBrains. And JetBrains is the company behind IntelliJ. Kotlin is open source. So you can really check whatever you want. The good thing is that Kotlin compiles to JVM bytecode. So whatever engine runs Java code, it can run Kotlin code. So that's the first advantage, like Groovy, like Scala, like whatever. There is an experimental feature trying to generate JavaScript, but since I'm not a front-end developer, it's not really like up to date, so I won't talk about it. And for me, it's a simpler Scala. I try to learn Scala. I try really a lot. It changed my way to develop Java application. And now, most of the structure I create are immutable. Scala was really great, but it's very powerful. Very, very powerful. And you know what they say, that with great power comes great responsibility. And when you have to work into real-life projects, you don't want some very smart developer coding something very great, but that nobody understands. Nobody. Because we are not all great developers. I'm not a great developer. I'm just an average developer. I want my code to be readable. I want my code to be maintainable. You ask 10 Scala developers to develop a feature, you will probably have 13 solutions. Yeah, because it's very powerful. I don't want that in my project. I want that everybody can read the code. I want everybody to be able to maintain the code. And Kotlin is, for me, just the right touch. What does it offer you? Of course, since it's a simpler Scala, you still have object-oriented programming baked in. You also have functional feature baked in. So all the stuff that Java 8 brings you in Java, you already have out of the box in Kotlin. Of course, it's statically typed. It means that it's not a scripting language. The compiler catches the types error that you might have made. Baked in is null safety. I will come back to that later. In Java 8, the problem is you can have optional, and optional will just save your life, right? Because you are already using optional. Who is using optional? Great. And how many libraries don't use optional? Yeah. So many libraries don't use optional. So, I mean, for your code, it's great. But when you want to integrate third-party code, it's really bad. Because even if it returns an optional, you know that it might contain something or not. But if it returns just the type, you are never sure. So you will still do if null. In Kotlin, you have a dedicated type for stuff that can be null, and a dedicated type for stuff that cannot be null. And the compiler catches that at compile time. Good stuff. Java exceptions, most of them are checked, at least the one from the legacy libraries. It seemed that it's not so good practice. It was a good experiment. It didn't work out so well, so no checked exception in Kotlin. Everything is runtime. You've got, like in Scala, named and optional arguments, so you can give default values. You don't need to have polymorphism with declaring the same method with different arguments. You can put defaults, and of course you can call arguments by name. That's really great. You've got lambda, since it's functional. Extension, I have a dedicated slide for that because it's really great. And the more important features that I find really lacking in Scala is a complete 100% Java Kotlin interoperability. That means that the good guys at JetBrains didn't just decide to create a new language. They had a problem with Java. They had a problem to maintain IntelliJ. There were too many lines of code, and they decided to create a new language to help them in that. But they couldn't just throw millions of lines of code. They had to work bit by bit like you would do in a real-world project. You don't start from scratch. You probably have a legacy. So you want to replace. So this also is baked in Kotlin. It integrates well. You can call Java code from Kotlin code without a glitch, but also the reverse is true. That is a feature that is sadly lacking in Scala. If you use everything, you will get very interesting quality about the code that makes it more maintainable. It will be more expressive. So in less characters, in less space, you will express the same stuff. So still, that's not the main advantage, because basically, shorter code doesn't equal to better code. But then you have to have improved object-oriented programming. So even though Kotlin is also functional, it can do a lot to improve your object-oriented design. And of course, it's functional. So for those who never have seen Kotlin code, this is very hello world Kotlin, right? So here you can see that semicolons are not necessary. So if you are like an ayatollah of semicolons, you can put them, but it's not necessary. You don't need static methods. You can put functions in files, and that changes your life. No more stupid utils class that are hard to name because basically they are just completely unrelated. Here you see that there is no type, and basically because Kotlin understood there is type inference, that in that case it returned nothing. It returned void, and in Kotlin there is nothing as void, there is something called unit, just like in Scala. And here you can see how you can call a method without any stuff. So for me, the real killer feature is extension methods. And it's a nice trick that you can work out your code so that you can add behavior to an existing type. You don't need to extend it. Of course, in the end, in the bytecode, it will be a util static method. Don't worry. So you can only call public method on the existing type, but it really changes your life. And I will show you how you can use it. But perhaps now would be a good time for a demo, because you are not here to listen to me non-endlessly. So how do you start with a Spring Boot Kotlin project? Here you can start on start.spring.io. Who knows about this stuff? Half the room? No, more than half the room? Okay. So this is your entry point to any Spring Boot project. You go there, you choose your build engine, you choose your Spring Boot version, you choose whatever you want, like let's make a web MVC stuff, we want REST stuff, whatever, right? And the good stuff is that here in language, you have Kotlin. Seems like nothing, right? But that means that the people at Pivotal made Kotlin a first-class citizen of the Spring Boot ecosystem. So you don't need every time you start a new project to copy-paste the stuff. So you can generate your project, and also something I didn't mention is that Kotlin needs only Java 6. You don't need something more. If you are doing Android development, that is unrelated to Spring Boot, but if you are doing Android development, Kotlin is a very, very good stuff. So you create your project. Another way to do that is to use IntelliJ. And as I said, JetBrains, the company behind IntelliJ, is providing you with Kotlin. So it's very great that they integrate it with it. And if we want to make a new project, another way, if you are using IntelliJ, is to choose a Spring initializer. And as you can see, we have the same stuff here, and we can choose also a Kotlin project. Okay, and then you choose your stuff, whatever, web, web, and REST, and whatever. Okay? So I won't do that, obviously. I already have my project. So this is how you start. And this is what you get. So this is a Spring Boot application with Kotlin. As you can see, the main class here has just been annotated with Spring Boot application, like we do in Java. If you don't need to do anything, if the body of the class is empty, you don't need to put stupid braces just to please the compiler. And here I have a function that is attached to no class that I can put in another file just to kickstart the stuff. Looks nice. Now about the downside. Spring Boot does a lot of stuff under the cover. And basically, when you do Spring Boot, it will proxy extend whatever your class is. And you notice here the keyword open. By default, when you use Spring Boot in Java, everything works fine, because Java makes classes extendable by default. Right? You can extend from any class that is not marked as final. Kotlin took the exact opposite stance. By default, everything is final. So if you put stuff here and don't say that it's open, Spring Boot won't start and will complain. By default, this is done since you are using the starter, the Spring Boot starter. If you don't, you just have to remember how it works. Okay? So let's start by creating a simple REST controller. I will create a hello controller. This is a REST controller. And yeah, stupidly simple. The same could go with Java. You have a Java controller, you annotate it with REST controller, you put request mapping, and it works. And here, we are not writing idiomatic Kotlin code. We're writing Kotlin code all right, but we are not using the fabulous power of Kotlin. First, I told you about the semicolon. Let's remove the semicolon, because, I mean, it's just to please the compiler. We don't need to please the compiler. The compiler must please us. Opposite way. Now, there is a good stuff about Kotlin, is if you have a very short body, you can say, OK, I will use a different syntax and a shortcut, and we can say like that. And here, we replaced, it looks really like Scala, right? If you know Scala, nothing mind-blowing. If you don't know, wow, it's magical. We replaced the braces with an equal sign. We put everything on the same line. And here you say, OK, by default, implicitly, there is a return keyword. Of course, it works also if you don't want to return anything. In that case, it's bitching, because here, I said you should return string, and println obviously don't return string, returns unit. Even better, most of the time in Java, again, we are writing stuff because the compiler is stupid. No, let's face it, the Java compiler is great, was great 20 years ago, but now it's pretty stupid. Here, it's obvious that the return type of the method is string. It's obvious. So why don't we have to tell that it will return a string? It returns a string, and it knows that it returns a string because the compiler can understand it's a bloody string. OK? Let's run that. So now the not fun stuff. If you try to run a Spring Boot application using run like that, you will notice that by default, it will, yeah, I'm sorry, but here I cannot make it bigger. No, I cannot make it bigger. So sorry if you are very far. Should have come closer to me. Anyway, here it won't work, because basically, when it compiles, it won't compile into this class. It will compile into a dedicated class that is made by the compiler called cat. In that case, IntelliJ doesn't know about it yet, so it will say it's red. It doesn't know it. Still, it will work. Just a little demo for you. So it started. Great. We can try localhost, and I said hello. Who doesn't like a demo which works? It works. Great. Now, let's go a little further. I will create a new file saying greeting controller. And in that case, I want to show you string interpolation. So let's say that I'm using path variable. I mean, you do that in Spring Boot, or sorry, in Spring MVC, you do that a lot. You do the same with Spring Boot. You use string interpolation. And of course, in Java, you would have to concatenate the string. And sometimes it gets very bad to understand the concatenation. Here, just by adding $ here, it will get replaced automatically. Sorry. Yep. And here, if I say hello, Yevgeny, hello. Are there any Yevgeny here? No, I should have chosen a Serbian name, but unfortunately, I don't know them well enough. Okay? So, super easy stuff. Let's do some injection. I mean, if you are using Spring, you are doing injection. If you don't do injection, probably you are not using Spring. So let's create a Java class and say, I will say welcome. I didn't want to do that, but anyway. Oh. Yeah, it's Java. Thank you. Thank you, guys. It's a demo problem, you know? So I create a welcome controller. I will also first demo you how you can use default value. So I will create a welcome class. Basically, it's just a stupid entity. And here, I can say, OK, I will create a new welcome and say, I said welcome, and I say Vox days Belgrade. Now, if I, sorry, up, who is there? So I'm expecting to have a JSON object saying hello, Vox de Belgrade, or whatever I put here. OK, it works. Now let's imagine that by default, I want to print Vox de Belgrade every time, but I want to be able to override it sometimes. That's a problem we already have, as I said. And in Java, you would have to create 2 methods for that. In Kotlin, we will just put a default value here. Sorry, I don't know about the name of the city, obviously. And it compiles. So it works quite well. Now, if I restart the stuff, uh-oh. Uh-oh. What did I do wrong? Can anyone help me? No? Yes, that. You have to finish the mapping, even if it's useless. So here, I want to say welcome every time to VDB Belgrade. Now I have to check, in that case, if who is not null or null, and then I can use the default or not. But as you can see, you can use default parameter. In that case, I didn't want to say that. I wanted the who to be the default. And here, it doesn't work, because the order is reversed. It's not what. What is welcome? I wanted to say, welcome VDB Belgrade. So in that case, I can say what equals welcome, and now it compiles again. So that's what I told you about. You can have default values for parameters, but you can also have named parameters. So it's a bad practice in Java to have a long list of parameters in your methods, right? It means probably that you forgot to create an entity somewhere. In Kotlin, it's also not so good, but it means that you can still have a long list of parameters, and since you name them accordingly, it makes the codes much more readable. Also, you can do something that you cannot do in Java, and you can do something like that. That I reversed the parameter order. And that is very important, because most of the time, when you are coding, you are just calling here string and string. And you don't know the API by heart, so sometimes you change the order. By using the parameter name, saying who and what, it makes it very clear what should be in which order. So you reduce your cognitive load. You reduce the time it takes you to look at the API. It reduces the time it takes you to debug, because you just switch the order. So now, as I told you before, injection. And for now, I won't do that like that. I will do something like that. So I want to inject something in the controller. As you can see here, it's very easy, because we can just pass something into the class. In Java, you decouple between the class declaration and the constructor declaration. In Kotlin, everything can be made in one shot. Okay, let's try again. It seems there is no error. Good. No error. So that's really great, because first we are using the latest version of Spring to automatically inject something without the need for auto-wired. Who is still using auto-wired every time on constructors? A lot of people. Which version of Spring are you using? 4 months ago already, the commit which made this possible was done. So it really, really is great if you want to remove unnecessary stuff. Using auto-wired, for me, is an anti-pattern, because you are using dependency injection to decouple your classes, and then you put auto-wired, which imports Spring namespace, which makes you dependent on the Spring framework. It's really an anti-pattern, so you shouldn't do that, in my opinion. Now you can still use auto-wire, but without the annotation. Very, very cool. Now let's do some refactoring, because here I have a controller, I have something that I cannot call a controller, because now that you notice I have 3 classes into the same file. So I can do the same. I can say, okay, I want to put every one of my controller. Here, I will put it here. I will rename that as controllers. I will remove the empty file. And here, it's not a welcome controller anymore. It's a welcome feature, so you can call it welcome. So I can have a much better granularity. You know, since most of the stuff in Kotlin is only one-liners, you can, oh, sorry, I was wrong. No, I was right. So since you only have one-liners, you can put much more stuff into the same file. And sometimes in Java, you say, okay, I will create an interface that has one method. You know, with Java 8, you do that a lot, single method interface. And you create one file. So you have this screen and you have this text. It's waste. You want to use the full capacity of your screen. You can put more code here. So now what I would like to do is to have a repository. I want to show you that you can use Spring Data GPA too, right? Who is using Spring Data GPA? It's a great product. Perfect. So I can annotate the stuff with entity, and I can add here, I will say the ID. Okay? Now I will create the welcome repository, and I will inject the welcome repository into there. And here I will say I will read all entities because I'm pretty lazy and I don't want to say everything. And here I can say I don't need to say welcome anymore since I want everyone. I will let it there. Here I will create a new stuff. It will be much easier. And here I will say greet, it should be called welcome all. And I will service dot get all. Something I didn't say before is here, I injected the service. If you just do that, you see here that you have a val. And for people who are doing Scala, who are doing Lombok, val means something that cannot change. By doing that, you've automatically created a getter. So I can ask the controller to get the service by calling get service. Now, there is a shortcut in Kotlin that if a getter starts with get and has no parameter, blah, 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 you can just write it like that. That's very handy. In Java, if I create a Java class now and create an instance of welcome controller, I would need to say get. However, in that, the reverse of val is var. That means that you can, you create a getter and you create a setter. In that case, however, I don't even want to create a getter. So I can say that it's private, that it's only for my own purpose. And it prevents you from doing like stupid stuff that you do a lot in Java. Oh, for every attribute, I create a getter setter pair. Even for stuff that is dependency, that's not state, that's dependency, right? So you shouldn't do something like that. And here I can do that as well. And it creates very, very clean stuff. So here in my service, I inject the repository. And since it's a GPA repository, it will be created by Spring Data GPA when it reads the configuration. It will create a dedicated implementation. Here, I inject the service that is here into the welcome controller, and I mean, it's done. So normally, gods of the demo, please help me once more time. Yeah, you have to invoke them sometimes because... No! No default constructor for entity. What happened? That's the problem of Spring Data GPA. Spring Data GPA requires you to have a default constructor so that it can use setters. So in that case, here you have to change val with vars, and you also have to create a new constructor. And to create a new constructor, you just do like this. And this is how you can create multiple constructors with Kotlin. So it makes the things a little different. It takes the default. The default is for nearly like 95% of your classes, you have one single constructor. It makes it easier. And for the 5 last %, it makes it a little different. Much better, right? And now, of course, I already had my repository created, and it works very well, right? And I mean, it's just Spring, so you put your payload, and it creates a JSON that is adapted because there is a lot of default transformers already available made available by Spring Boot. Of course, you can, let's say that I want to show you how you can do some functional programming. So I will wrap the entities that I find inside a wrapper, and I will create a new class for that. So I will create a wrapper. And again, here, it will take a welcome. It will take an int that we can define elsewhere. And here, I make available 2 new getters for Spring Boot, pure Spring Boot Java JSON to query, a get who and a get what. And I hide the fact that I have a welcome. So I want everything to be flat. And here, I can map it. So if you have played with Java 8 functional programming, you have map. But in order to call map, normally, you would have to stream or to parallel stream. Here, it's baked into the language. So the default stuff, we can say it's a welcome. And for every welcome, I want to create a new enhanced welcome that will take this welcome and say, I want to say 0, or you can iterate over it, whatever. OK? Now, this is interesting, but we can do better. Who is here a Groovy user? No Groovy user? OK. By default, when you have parameters, Groovy defaults to name it it. So here, we'd say it, and like that. But since it's a default, we can also remove the default. OK? And I can do something like that. I will convert to block body, and then I will say, and here, you see that the info type is right. I can say var I equals 0 and I plus plus, because I just want you to demo you how it works. So you can put timestamps or whatever. Done. So functional programming is baked in. You have to do nothing, not call stream. Every time you have a structure, it works like that. my points in that demonstration is that Spring Boot loves Kotlin, that you can start writing Spring Boot code with Kotlin right now, that it's supported out of the box, and that you get cleaner, better, more expressive codes with Kotlin than you would do in Java. And more important, you don't have to remove everything that you have written so far. You can really migrate class by class, bit by bit. If you are using IntelliJ, it's even better because you have a feature that lets you migrate code from Java to Kotlin. Of course, it's not idiomatic Kotlin, but it's still great. Now might be the time to have some Q&A. If you are interested, you can read about my blog. You can follow me on Twitter, of course. I just need some followers to reach 2,000, but it would be great if I could tweet that here I reach them. If you want to offer me jobs or whatever and to make me rich, you can contact me on LinkedIn, and you will find the codes, which perhaps might be the more interesting to you because you don't want to make me rich, probably. The code is available on GitHub. Now it's time for some questions, if you want. Please.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you mix Java and Kotlin code, source code in the same project as in the case in Scala?
Yeah, I thought I really emphasized that. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's great. You don't need to take your Java project, remove it. You can add one Kotlin class or migrate to Kotlin 1 class. And the good thing, and it's really better than Scala, if you have ever done Scala Java integration, you know what I mean. It's really seamless. You don't see any problem because that's how they work on IntelliJ. They didn't remove everything and write from scratch. They migrate bit by bit.
So it's possible. Thank you.
It's not only possible, it's encouraged. Other questions? Here?
Can you, thank you for the presentation. You mentioned a few times that the syntax is practically copied from Scala, and I just Googled solutions to use Spring Boot with Scala. So why wouldn't we use, if I'm a Scala developer, why would I use Kotlin? If you are a Scala developer, it fits you perfectly. If you have no problem, I mean, don't use Kotlin. All right. Keep it. I mean, if you are happy with it, I see no reason why you should change. But if you are a Java developer and who is bitching a lot about Java verbosity and stuff, but you don't want to go to Scala because really Scala is really like another level, Kotlin is perfect. But it's like everything. I mean, there is no golden hammer. If you are happy with Scala, keep Scala. Be happy with Scala. Be happy, period. Other questions? Yes, here? Here?
Just one question. In the pom.xml, we specify the language to Java, and when we migrate bit to bit, how do we specify that the compiler should know that some code is in Java, some is in Kotlin?
You can check on the Kotlin site. It shows two different kind of POMs, and in that case, it's not out of the box. You have to add it. If you go on the Kotlin site, you will see two POMs. One is for pure Kotlin project. The other is for Kotlin and Java project. So you just copy the paste the additional port, and it works seamlessly as well. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much.